Hello and welcome everyone to today's Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Lean Bronze Certification Process. I am Jerry Strohmeyer, the Education Training Program Coordinator for AME, and I will be your moderator. Today's presenter is Hank Czarnecki, the Director of Auburn University's Technical Assistance Center. Hank has more than 20 years of experience in teaching Lean, facilitating kaizen improvement events, and coaching companies on their Lean journey. He is also Lean Bronze certified, a NIST qualified Lean manufacturing trainer, and a certified training within industry instructor. He currently serves as the ASQ Lean Enterprise Division Networking Chair. Hank volunteers his time as an AME Southeast Regional Board member and as an AME Excellence Award Assessor. Before we start, just a couple housekeeping items. You'll be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar. You will see that you are muted on your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area in the attendee panel and click on Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox, and it will be an invitation and link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey today, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. Hank has also graciously agreed to provide a PDF of today's presentation. We'll be sending that along with a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. Now I am pleased to introduce Hank Czarnecki, who will present the Lean Bronze certification process. Take it away, Hank.
Well, thank you, Jerry, and welcome everybody. Glad to have you here and glad that you're interested in the Lean Bronze certification process. All right, I'm just going to go through just real quick our agenda and expectations to make sure it's what you are expecting from this webinar. Going to do a quick overview and talk a little bit on why become certified, kind of the end game out there into that process. Then back up a little bit and say, what are the real requirements to become Lean Bronze certified? And then the nuts and bolts. This is going to be the bulk of the webinar. And it is going to be very tactical. It is going to be the how. The three different sections within the Lean Bronze certification. We're going to walk through all those in detail and begin to look at some of the key points on each section. So we're going to look at education, portfolio, the tactical projects, and then the final section is the reflection. Have some summary slides, and then be able to take any of your questions out there. So hopefully that aligns with your expectations. As you look at this for our Lean certification process, it really provides the Lean practitioner with the certification of knowledge and then also the certification of application. That is really where the portfolio process comes in. Have you not only have the knowledge, but have you had the skills where you're beginning to demonstrate that the tools, the techniques, the theory behind Lean. As you look at this, the Lean certification process was developed by and also administered by volunteers. It really is a volunteer organization passionate about Lean and saying, how do we really get the qualification out there to more people within our industry? Currently, there are 3 levels. There's a bronze, silver, and a gold. And it is sponsored by 3 organizations: the Shingo Prize for Excellence in Manufacturing, the Society for Manufacturing Engineering, SME, and then also AME, Association for Manufacturing Excellence. All work together on the Lean and Oversight and Appeals Committee. As you look at this, and we begin to put this in context, the Lean certification is really based around the current Shingo Prize model. As you look at that, it starts with the cultural enablers, and for the Lean Bronze, that is 15% of the exam. The second piece is continuous process improvement. Those are basically the tools and techniques. That's the largest, the bulk of the Lean Bronze certification exam. 60% comes from the continuous process improvement side. Then you have the culture, consistent Lean enterprise culture, and that is 15% of the exam. And then finally, the business results at the bronze, at the tactical bronze level, that is 10%. As you look at the different levels, not going to go into it, but they will pull from the same 4 sections of the Shingo Prize, but there will be more emphasis in the other sections as you would apply for the silver or the gold. The certification process, they're housed by SME out there in the process. They are actually provide the certification. And it has an appeals and oversight committee out there. Those are the volunteers. There's 3 members from each of the sponsoring bodies, SME, AME, and Shingo out there. And for the Oversight and Appeals Committee, they really maintain the integrity of the exam. They maintain the body of knowledge where it's pulled from, the competency and behavior model. They are constantly looking at the review, the recommended reading list, and they also begin to maintain the Lean Bronze review process. So that's a little bit of where it comes from. Now you begin to look at why. Why become Lean Bronze certified? And there's really 2 pieces. One is for yourself. This is your certification. It's an individual certification, not a company or an organization certification out there. But it really is demonstrating your knowledge from a tactical level, how you can apply those lean principles and those tools out there. It is industry recognized, basically a third-party certification out there that will travel with you. It's your own piece, your certification. So as your career changes, it follows you. As you may or may not change organizations, definitely follow you through the organizations out there. It's recognized by lean leaders out there. And as you look at this, it really is a chance to improve your marketability. So that's on your side as the people side. On the other side, as a business out there, right, why are we doing it? We're trying to look at how do we begin to develop our team members. So part of the lean certification process, it will identify opportunities out there for the team members to improve. There is a piece out there where it really begins to look at how the lean concepts have been applied out there. It provides some standardization within your organization for lean out there, and then the result pieces. The folks, the companies, the organizations that have folks that are lean certified, they see the ROI out there, they see the employee retention with the reduced turnover. So you'll see very good results from getting Lean Bronze certified. So that's kind of a little bit on the why. Then as you begin to look at this and we begin to look at the process, we're really looking at the bronze level, and that is really at the tactical level. As you kind of see up there, applying tactical implementation within basically a cell, within a group, or into a value stream. And typically when we're looking at that, it really is at the kaizen event, the improvement event, the rapid improvement event cycle there. So as you look at that, first thing is we need a knowledge exam. And that is an open book exam. It is 3 hours. It is approximately 165 multiple choice questions. There's 4 possible answers out there. And the passing rate is 75% or higher on the overall test. The second piece on the what, once the knowledge exam has been passed, then is the portfolio. And we'll go into these in a little more detail, but basically you need education and training, 80 hours, and that is graded on pass or fail. Do you have 80 hours or not? Then you have 3 projects that are going to follow plan, do, check, act format, and each project will be graded. The points are 4 points for the plan section, 3 for the do, 3 for the check, and 5 for the act, and each project must get a 12 out of 15. And then the third portion of the portfolio is your reflection, and you're really beginning to reflect on your lean journey out there. We'll talk more in detail, and that will require 20 out of 25 points. Then once you do receive your certification out there, the recertification process is required every 3 years, basically showing that you have education and training requirements to meet those. So as we look at this and look at our exam, the exam is based on 4 books. Basically, it's based on Gemba Kaizen by Masaki Mai, Pascal Dennis, Lean Production Simplified, Womack and Jones, Lean Thinking, and then the value stream mapping book, Learning to See by Shook and Rother. So as you look at that, there's also some supplemental reading, and that's the Shingo Model, the Shingo Institute Research Award, Mark Graben's Lean Hospital, and I also added the Lean Lexicon by LEI. That is basically the dictionary for some of the terms. So as you look at this and we begin to look at the portion of it, everything on the initial exam is going to come from those 4 books. When you look at the certification process, in order to have a valid certification piece, everything is going to track back to those 3 books, and the process has been updated as the books are updated. The exam is open book format, so you can bring those 4 books in, the supplemental reading, you can bring in any additional, basically non-electronic. Can't phone a friend, you cannot bring in an ebook out there, but all that is fair game for the Lean Bronze exam. So that's the starting point there for the exam. Now, as we begin to run through the flow chart out there into our process, first thing, you take your Lean Bronze exam out there and hopefully you pass, but if you don't, and that happens, then you have a chance to retake it. Basically, you need to wait longer than 30 days, and there is a $60 retest fee, and then you can take it again. If you don't, then you need to start the whole process over, and there's very few folks that end up doing that. But you pass the Lean Bronze exam, and then the next thing is you'll begin to submit your portfolio to SME, like we talked about. And the review process there, the target there is 30 to 60 days to be able to provide feedback from your portfolio. They are done by volunteer reviewers out there, so some are quicker, some take longer out there, but overall they begin to hit that 30 to 60 day time frame. And then as you get your feedback there, hopefully you pass. Then you can begin to celebrate and just need 3 years down the road for your recertification. Then as you look, if you don't pass, you have an opportunity to resubmit. Hopefully you'll pass out there and begin to celebrate. And as you look at that, one tip that we found is you really have the ability to contact your reviewers. So sometimes there needs to be a little bit more clarity. There's trying to understand some of their comments. Some reviewers provide more detailed comments than others. They all provide comments out there. But if you really need clarification, contact your reviewer. There's no issue with that. If you submit your portfolio for a second time and it does not make it, then it is going to go to the Oversight and Appeals Committee. Those are the 3 representatives from each body out there, and they will look at everybody who has not passed a second time and really decide, is it valid, is it not valid, was there an issue with the reviewer, and they begin to make a decision there. So hopefully you pass there, but if you don't, then you have to wait 1 year, and then there is a resubmit fee in order to do the process over. So that's what we're looking for the Lean Bronze certification piece. So as we're breaking it down a little bit more in terms of the portfolio, so you've passed your exam out there and you're starting to write your portfolio, education and training. So as you begin to look at the education and training, reviewers are really looking for a variety of training and different personal development activities. If you are looking to progressively go up from a bronze to a silver, a gold within there, you cannot reuse the same training or education from what you put on your bronze out there. But basically, our applicants do very well on this section. I said there's all sorts of different education, training opportunities out there. You could teach classes. You can be a learner in a classroom out there. You can do some hands-on type kaizen events or improvement activities. Anything on web-based, this webinar would count as an hour towards your education and training. If you attend any of the conferences, AME's national conference or some of the regional workshops, any of the videos that you watch, the 4 books that you need to read for the Lean Bronze exam. Each one of those would count as 4 hours out there, any type of plant tour. So that works really well, and just showing you it's not the clearest out there. I apologize for this, but you can kind of see. Basically, you're going to describe your activities out there, your training, education, when did it happen, how many hours, and then you're going to, within the 4 sections of the body of knowledge out there, you're just going to mark where it was applicable, whether it was enablers, continuous process improvement, the culture, or the business results. Like I said, this section is 80 hours pass fail. Typically, everybody does great on this. Now we get into the portfolio piece, and just starting off with some general key points out there. One is have someone proofread your portfolio. Just as you look, some of the basics. Obviously, y'all have been through some of this, and spell check will not catch everything out there. But as you're looking at, you really want to present your professional image. No typos. Does it make grammatical sense out there? And as you look at this, this certification is about you. It is about you. It's not about the team. It's not about your organization. It's not about your company. So if it's your certification, I need you to put I in there. The certification process is really saying, what did you do? And I want you to begin to write it, I did this. And I know that's very counterintuitive as we look at Lean. We really look at a lot of times with a team-based methodology, or even a small group coach and learner, coach and mentor mentality. Like I said, this is what did you actually do, and how did you use the tools, the techniques, the methods of lean manufacturing. And then also on there, for the key point out there, I need you to answer the question. I need you to answer the question that is asked. And to put it in context, I have received my certification, Lean Bronze certification, 2008, 2009, in that time frame. I probably reviewed about 20, 25 portfolios for SME, and I probably reviewed maybe another 50 of people that were going to submit prior to that. And one of the things that really stood out for me was people are not answering the question that are asked. So I don't know how else to really put it there, but read the question, answer the question. As you look at this also, make sure that these are reviewers. They're not in your space, they're not in your company, they're not in your work area out there. Make it easy for them to understand what you're doing. They don't understand your acronyms out there. They don't understand maybe some of the items that you do within your organization. Within the review process too, the reviewers are given guidelines basically to begin to minimize some of the variability between reviewer out there, to have some consistency. And the Lean Oversight and Appeals Committee has done a really good job trying to minimize that variation and being able to have a consistent reviewer, but we're all individuals. It'd be really great if there was that book where we're all consistent and all read the same thing and scored things exactly the same, but there is some subjectivity there. I just want you to be aware that it does exist. As you look at this and we begin to look at the progression of the portfolio, really want you to be clear, concise, and to the point. You definitely don't get judged on the volume of words or how heavy your portfolio is there. And then even as you begin to submit your portfolio, it will all be written text. No charts, no graphs, no pictures, nothing of that nature to help demonstrate what you're actually done. And that was really to keep the consistency of the portfolio process and to also minimize the length of some of the portfolios. That was really some of the initial learning in the initial stages of the portfolio development. No jargons, no acronyms. Tell your story, tell your story, tell your story very clearly and concisely. As you begin to look at this on project selection, You have 3 tactical projects, and basically they will be kaizen events. People have done other things, but most folks will choose 3 kaizen events. They could be from the same value stream. They could be from a different value stream. They could be at different times within your career. But the reviewers like to see some type of progression, some type of variety within the projects, not all the same, not all 5S maybe or something like that. Must follow the Plan, Do, Check, Act process, and that's laid out very concisely that you'll receive the format once you pass your exam. Your roles. Sometimes your roles out there into that process, you can be a participant on an event, you can be sometimes a facilitator within that event, or if you're really leading the event and driving it, that tends to be the easiest. You tend to work a little bit more with the Plan, Do, Check, Act process in there, and it's easier to write those up. Not that you can't do it in any of the other stages out there, but that would be the easiest out there. And the participation out there, part of that is really to understand why the project was selected, why it was important within there. So as we look at the projects, I'm going to go through a sample portfolio. I'm not going to read what's actually in the actual sections out there, but just to look at those. It basically starts with the portfolio has a project heading. And as you look at this is just really for the reviewer to have some idea what's going on there. The industry and organization affected, what they're really saying is where. Tell me where this improvement project was going on. Then they're asking for a problem statement, right? Describe the problem. I'm going to read what's in the green there. Describe the problem or opportunity. And that's really setting the stage for y'all, telling us what happened. Tell me what you're working on very concisely out there. You will get a chance later on in the portfolio process to begin to expand upon that. And then we want to know the when. Start date out there. Is it early in your career? Is it later in your career? Did it happen after you received your knowledge certification, after you passed your exam, or prior? You can go back and use prior events. There's nothing that precludes those from happening out there. And as you look at this section is not scored out there. You do need to answer all the questions out there. And then as a key point out there, as you begin to describe your problem statement, remember, a problem is a gap from a standard, a gap from a target, a gap from a target condition, desired condition. Try to make that clear. Try to make that very easy to understand for the reviewer. So there's a heading. The second part of the heading, still no points out there into that process, is your role. Help us as a reviewer understand your role into that process. What was your piece of the project out there? Were you leading it? Were you a team member? Were you facilitating it? Were you a subject matter expert? Help us understand that piece. And then also your team members. Why were the team members selected out there? Was it explained out there into that portion of it? What went into your thinking in order to basically have a cross-functional team within that process? So I said, that is really just setting the stage for now the Plan, Do, Check, Act section of it. So the plan piece has 4 points, and each subsection of the plan is 1 point out there into that process. So as you begin to see this, as you look, first one out there, how are you involved in the project selection and definition? Like I said, this is your portfolio process, and we as reviewers want to know, what did you do? Why did you select this project? Or if it was assigned to you, help us understand that you understood why the organization, the department, the company chose this project out there. As you look at this into that piece, you also want to know is, how do you look at this project and tie it to the impact on the entire organization? Right? Your involvement, your reason for the project, the impact, basically linking to our result metrics, cost, quality, delivery, customer service, customer satisfaction, safety, all those could be in there. But we want to begin to see your thinking and make sure on the planning stage that you understand why this project was important, why this project was chosen. Then as the project is chosen out there, next piece on our plan out there is how did you, and this is again you, how did you document the current, how did you document the target condition? Observations, anecdotal out there, a lot of times the candidates may not provide enough information, but one of the things we're really looking for Lean, one of the concepts there, do you go and see? Did you walk out there to the floor? Did you observe? Did you communicate, talk, converse, understand from the team members what's going on there? Very key in terms of direct observations. And then the other piece too is, did you collect data? Are you speaking with data? Is there an opportunity to understand numerically what's going on there? And as a current and target condition, really like those to be very specific and would like them to be very measurable. As we go back to the check piece, we're going to check against the current and target conditions, and we'd like to see how we did from a measurable standpoint out there. So as you look at this, want you to be involved, want you to understand what's going on there in terms of understanding the current condition, grasping the situation, and then here's the target where we'd like to go as an organization. Said a lot of times people will use value stream mapping. That's a great tool to use within the section. It's not necessary. There's other things you could do that would suffice. So that was the second point on plan. And really, as we look at this in terms of our plan section, plan, do, check, act, we're really saying we have our plan and saying on that right side, if we do these activities, then I'm going to check them at my project, act and adjust, I should get what I expected. Follow the process, I get the results, hopefully. And if I don't, I begin to learn from it. So the third piece for the plan section is metrics. Metrics. How did you measure the cause of the problem? How did you measure your opportunity there? Facts, figures is really what we're trying to see there. Could be change over time, for this case, could be out there. But as you really look at the metrics, this section out there, there's both, do the metrics make sense, right? Are they supporting what you said was the gap between the current and the target condition within there? And then the other piece too is, do you understand why the metrics were actually chosen, or why did you choose the metrics within there? Some people have concerns that some of their information is proprietary. So if it is company confidential data, you can't index those, you can normalize them, you can, begin to use that, still share what the results were percentage-wise, but we don't need the actual data within that portion of it. So you can begin to see those. And then the fourth part of plan is our planning methods. How did the team develop plans to attack the problems? A lot of times we will use charters. Our value stream mapping sometimes helps us understand our challenges or our breakthrough objectives. Process maps, spaghetti maps sometimes help us out there. And then on the other side, how do we begin to manage that? A lot of times it could be our activities as we look at our sequence of activities, what needs to be done in what sequence and when. We can use something similar like a Gantt chart follows into that role out there. And then the other one too might be a stoplight chart. And y'all are familiar with those in terms of a green, we're on target, yellow, we might be behind schedule out there, and red, it's probably not happening out there. So as you look at the planning side too, we're looking at some of our planning methods out there, and no one is expecting you to use Microsoft Project or something like that. If you use it, great. If it helps you in your planning method, absolutely great. But we also can begin to look at how we communicate both with the team, within the organization, with some of our stakeholders. How do we communicate that portion of it? How do we begin to look at this and say, where's our implementation plan? Have we looked at what we need to do in terms of our countermeasures, in terms of what we need to check, and do we have some type of implementation plan that we can use in that regards out there, or even on the other side, even a roles and responsibility matrix where things are clearly defined would work out well. And going back to the same thing with the portfolio, this is about you. This is your specific role in the planning out there. And one thing that we've seen lately is people have been saying, I followed my company specified planning. I followed my company charter. As a reviewer, I would like a little more detail. Obviously, I don't work in your company. I don't live in your company. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I think it's great that your company has a standard process there. Enlighten me on what that is. So those are our 4 points for our planning methods. The do. Typically, as I reviewed portfolios, everybody does fairly well on the do sections, not so much on the planning portion. Typically, there's some gaps within there, but pretty much people do well on the do. And the first one out there, the do, is 3 points. And the first one is, what is your contribution to the project? What is your role? What is your responsibility basically during the kaizen event? You can be a leader, you can be a facilitator, you can be outside the process. I just want to begin to know that. And then as you look at this, you're basically, as you are addressing this, you are really beginning to encourage change at that local level out there. And a lot of times you really are acting as the role model to demonstrate the behavior or begin to enlighten people on what they should see. So you'll see that in terms of the do. The second one out there, as the do portion of there, is what are your proposed countermeasures? And a countermeasure is really defined as, we're going to try that. It may or may not be a solution. It may fix the problem. It might fix a portion of the problem out there. And then what was the implementation? And really 2 parts there. What was changed by the team? So what countermeasures, what did the team try out there? And I would really like you all to list those and describe specific countermeasures that moved you towards that target condition. So that was really what was done by the team. And then the second part in there is, what changes were you specifically involved in? Remember, again, this is your portfolio. So I'm not looking for a whole section that says the team did this, the team accomplished this. I want to know from you, your portfolio, your certification, what countermeasures were you involved in? What implementation were you involved in? I said, really describing some of those actions. Typically, we're focusing on, did it begin to address some of the root cause? And even on the other side, if it didn't, what did we learn from that process out there? And some of this, in terms of the countermeasures, we really are focused as a plan, do, check, act, very small cycles of experiments. So we have our role, we have our proposed countermeasures, and then the third point on the do portion of it is tying it back to really some of the Shingo, the body knowledge out there, saying what were the lean principles used, trying to make sure that we did implement these, but do we see the linkage, do we see the tie, do we see the alignment to the body of knowledge? And as you look at this, 2 things really we're trying to see out there is your personal involvement as you begin to apply the lean tools out there. And then one thing that we've seen in the past is we saw some of the tools out there described well, but we didn't see the principles as much. So I'm just putting as a key point the principles out there that come from basically from lean thinking. And as you look at Womack and Jones, they basically say their principles, 5 principles: specify value from the customer out there, map your value streams, flow where you can, then pull where you must, and then work towards perfection. And then on the other side, within the Shingo model, there's other ones out there. You can begin to say some of the principles. How did you respect the team member? How, as a leader, did you lead with humility? How did you begin to iterate towards perfection, linking back a little bit to Womack's? fifth point there. Quality definitely is one of the principles out there. Flow and pull again. Have you used the scientific thinking, plan, do, check, act, a process focus, or value for the customer? And those are what we're, as a reviewer, beginning to look for in terms of the lean principles. So typically folks do well with the tools. There's been a gap in the past in some of the principles out there. So just providing those so you do have those as you develop your portfolio. And that is the 3 points for our do section. Then we check. Check, 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 check. Plan, do, check, act. So this is asking you, what did you do to monitor the changes that were being followed? And then on that piece, right, if you found a gap, if you found an exception out there, what did you do to correct it? Your personal role out there, and you're looking at how things begin to pare back, right? As you look at this piece, how does this one go back as you're looking at your process in the plan, your process in the do, and then your process in the check? Really trying to understand those three pieces out there. And for the check section, this is typically as the kaizen event, as some of the process is going on, how are we doing our daily update? It could be our kaizen newspaper. Sometimes people do those daily. Sometimes we begin to communicate to some of our leaders within our organization. So as we're filling our portfolio, that might be what we're looking for in terms of our check piece. Then the second one out there, the check. What is your assessment of the level and trend of improvement? Right? Did the changes, you're going back from your target, you did your plan and your do, did they meet your expectations? Yes or no? Did they achieve your target? Yes or no? And they don't necessarily have to achieve the target. The purpose of the portfolio is for you to document the plan, do, check, act process, and sometimes things don't turn out as we expect, but we learn from them. And then the second one is, what's the trend? So did your improvements happen? Yes, no, or on target? And then are they kind of holding steady out there for your improvements? Are they improving, or the other side, maybe they're starting to climb? So as you go back to the questions, one of the points brought out earlier were, I want you to answer the questions that are asked. So for this one, a lot of times people don't answer the question. They tend to put something else in there that doesn't address one of these. So as you look at this, I really want you to say the level of expectations were what? The trend is holding steady, it's improving, or it's sliding back. And then I would like you to articulate the why, that understanding. Do you understand, as you're filling out your portfolio, as you were part of that Kaizen event, why they didn't meet those expectations, or why they're not improving, or why they're sliding back within there? So that's what we're beginning to look at. And then the second point there in terms of our check piece is, how does it tie back to your target condition, right? And as you look at this, right, one of the things that we first need to do is, if we defined our target condition well, it makes this section very easy. What we've seen as reviewers, sometimes we don't do a good job in the plan section of very specifically and measurably defining our target condition. Well, if we don't define it well, it's very hard to compare it in this section out here. And that would be the gap that we see, I've seen through several of the portfolios out there. So, and then as you look at this, really kind of explaining how the results compare to those expectations. That's the second piece of the check. And then we begin to look at our act. We looked at our act portion of it, and the act is 5 points. And as we look at this first question, 2 points, what did you do personally to sustain this project? How are you involved out there? And this is really tying back, where the check is more short term. This is really tying back to the long term, right? You've done your Kaizen event, you did a lot of the countermeasures, you did some of the check in the process, maybe you do some of the check on the newspaper open items out there, maybe a 30-day check there, and now how do you keep it? What mechanisms are in place to sustain it for the long term? Sometimes as you look at this, right, full description out there, maybe you look at some of the standardization, maybe you look at some of the stability out there. Are there some mechanism in place that are monitored? Sometimes we'll see some leader standard work is really good out there in terms of following up and personally sustaining out there. I will say sometimes we have folks that are outside the organization or outside of the plant's location. So sometimes it's a little more difficult for them to personally sustain it because they're not physically at those locations out there. And a lot of times they might do some emails, they might do some periodic follow-up. Some people have done some webcams that have just been excellent in terms of making sure that some of the projects have been sustained. So you'll see those. So we have our ACT piece. What did you sustain it? And then the second point out there, this is one point of the ACT section, is now how do you expand this? As you're developing as a lean leader out there, once you did this project, what's next? What did you learn by doing this project? What are the next steps for this project? It could be something in the neighborhood of going deeper. Maybe I can go deeper and more in depth for this specific kaizen event, this specific area within your organization. Sometimes you might want to replicate it to different areas within your facility. Maybe it's a similar line, maybe it's similar equipment, similar processes out there, and could you replicate those out there? Could you expand some of what you learned here to maybe some of the other value streams within your organization? We can definitely see out there. So that's really, as the ACT piece, what we're looking for there in terms of your next step. And then the final 2 points out there for the ACT piece out there is, what did you learn? Huge in what we're doing with Lean. What did you learn by doing this project out there? And this is about you. What did you learn? Not your organization, not your department, not other people on the team out there. And it's about your creativity. It's about your personal growth within that portion of it. So very specific, not directed at other people out there, and your own internal personal growth. So we have the exam that we've passed. We have the knowledge and education and training that we've done. We've done our 3 tactical projects following the plan, do, check, act format. And the last piece out there is our reflection, right? And this is really our reflection from filling out the portfolio, filling out the education, and filling out the 3 tactical projects. And this is really focused on lessons learned, overcoming challenges, maybe changes within your method. It's part of that Japanese Hansei, right? What did I learn from this piece? What we found on some of these 2, typically the ones I've seen, people do great on their education. Their projects, usually decent. Like I said, it just depends, and usually those are easily correctable with some feedback. But the reflection piece, people kind of hit or miss really within that process out there. And this is 25 points within that process. 5 questions. Each question is worth 5 points, and you need to make 20 out of 25 over the whole section. So as you look at this, first piece on reflection, what are your lessons learned through completing the Lean certification process, right? How did you improve your knowledge, your skills, your ability by writing these portfolios? And this is about you. So definitely start with I learned. You might want to tie it back to some of the Shingo elements. Maybe you learned some of those principles within those processes a little bit deeper within that portion of it. As we look at this, just to reemphasize again, it's about you, not your organization. And be specific, not real generalities within there. I said sometimes we've reviewed them and we see people get very kind of flowery, fluffy language out there, and it's really hard. It's really hard to tie it back specifically to what that individual applying for certification has learned. So first section, 5 points. The second one, what has been the greatest challenge? The greatest challenge typically means one great challenge, one major challenge out there. As you all know, we all struggle. We're all learning. We have challenges within there, implementing lean, learning lean, developing our skills, maybe as a facilitator, as a teacher, as a coach, as a sensei within there. And this is really your challenge in your entire lean journey. This one is not as specific to the portfolio process, but as you're reflecting back out there, what's changed? What were some of your obstacles that you found there? And then the second part of the question, how did you address it? We definitely need both of those out there. Like I said, your greatest challenge, I want you to describe that, and then I want how you address it to actually link back to your challenge. Like I said, some people I've seen reviewed portfolios, how they addressed their challenge had nothing to do with the actual challenge that they described. It's really hard to give people credit for that. Third question on the reflection piece is your reflection. What changes could you make in your lean implementation process to make you more effective? What is your growth? What is your, how do you make yourself more effective in there? This could be a little bit more on trends or gaps that you saw in your 3 projects that you had to answer out there. Like I said, this is still emphasizing this is you. What could you do? And it shouldn't link back to your organization, your company, your department, things of that nature. Personally, I tend to like people that are a little bit more specific out there, so I really understand what they're looking for in terms of the certification process. Our fourth question out there, what is your 3 to 5 year personal lean improvement plan out there? And no one is looking for you to become silver or gold certified. That's great if that fits into your plan. That doesn't, no one's judging you on that. But it really is, I really want a 3 to 5 year plan, and a plan has who, you or something else where you're going to get resources from, going to do what are you going to achieve, measurable there, and by when. In 3 to 5 years out there, it should show some progression out there. It should begin to address some of your gaps in your learning. It might tie back to how could you be more of an effective leader from the previous question out there. All those we're looking for a little bit of alignment, a little bit tying together. This is the reflection section, and it's all 5 questions, and there should be some linkage and alignment there. It's not 5 individual questions that just happened to be put on the reflection section. And then the 5th question out there, going forward, what do you see as your greatest challenges to achieving your plan? And then how do you plan to overcome them? Same thing here. The better you define your plan, 3 to 5 year plan, the better it is, the easier it is to define your challenges to achieving your plan. Same thing here. These must be linked, correlated to the previous question. I can't tell you how many times that this question is answered and it has nothing to do with the previous plan that the person described. Provide feedback and really looking for some of those linkages out there. And again, just to emphasize, this is about you. This is not about your organization. It's not about your organizational challenges. So as we look at this, kind of points that we saw, speak with data. As we look at your portfolio, that really helps us as a reviewer begin to properly evaluate your learning there. Answer the question, answer the question, answer the question. I can't say that too much out there. We definitely want to see PDCA out there, make those linkages out there. You are telling a story. Your plan, do, check, act, cycle are all telling a story. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure it flows as your story. And the other piece too is make sure there aren't characters that are introduced. A lot of times as we review some of the portfolios, I will look at that. They're describing something, maybe a changeover event, and then down the road, all of a sudden we get introduced with other things, maybe a pull system or a quality issue out there that kind of jumps in that just doesn't fit. And I tend to say that's a new character that was introduced in the story. I don't get how they all of a sudden they appeared. Grammar, punctuation, be respectful to your reviewers to make sure that your portfolio has been proofread before out there. And again, this is your certification. I know it's difficult, but use I. Use I. Use I. Well, that brings us to our last slide. So I'm just happy to take anybody's questions. I think Jerry will begin to moderate this. So I do welcome you all for your time out there, and hopefully this met your expectations. I know it is sometimes very tactical in terms of some of the key points of the portfolio process, but hopefully that'll provide you some insight into following the Lean Bronze certification piece, and hopefully you go down that road. And us as AME, us as SME, we'd love to help facilitate that journey if it makes sense.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Hank. And now we'll review any questions. So if you do have any questions, please submit them on the right side of your screen. And the first question is, approximately what % of certifications are from transactional organizations?
When I'm reviewing, I'm not sure. I don't have that data, so I'll just speak from my small piece out there. I've seen a lot more with transactional in the healthcare section, so I see some of those processes a lot more. I personally have not reviewed a lot of service only organizations out there, but definitely they're definitely applicable out there. They definitely can follow Plan, Do, Check, Act within there. But I don't have the specific question out there, but they're fair game.
Okay, great. Next question is, so there's a couple of questions. Any data on how many people have achieved this certification? And the second question is, how long has AME been offering the certification?
You know, SME does not publish data on the number of folks there, so I will just tell you from my best guess, my best guess would be there's probably maybe 8,000 people that have started somewhere in the process, either the knowledge exam, the Lean Bronze exam, the silver, or the gold within that process out there. But in terms of, I wouldn't want to guess on where the numbers are there. I would just be telling you wrong, but I just, from my experience, just seeing what's happening out here, that would be my best guess. I know with the gold, I think there are only about a dozen folks that are gold certified, somewhere in that range. AME's been one of the initial founding partners, so they have been involved. I think this started in 2007, 2008, not sure on the exact day when it went live, but the Shingo, the SME, and the AME have been sponsors from the beginning.
Great. Next question is, what is the time frame between taking the test and turning in the portfolio?
3 years. So your time frame is 3 years to be able to, and that's really giving people a chance to do the projects. You don't have to, the projects do not have to be done after your exam out there. They could be done prior to the exam, but they do need to follow the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. I tell everybody, if you haven't done projects out there, it's much easier to do them going forward because you have the PDCA template, you have the questions that are there, it's easy to fill out, and it's easy to follow the process.
Okay. Next question is, PDCA is commonly viewed as a cycle. How would the cycle how would the cycle portion weigh towards the organization of the portfolio?
Could you repeat that, Jerry? Just
Sure. So PDCA is commonly viewed as a cycle. How would the cycle portion weigh towards the organization of the portfolio?
If I'm understanding that correctly, really the two pieces of it, or as you look at each section of it, there's a little PDCA in terms of the knowledge, education, and training, because as you develop your initial portfolio and you go for certification, they're looking for additional education and training down the process. Within each tactical projects, obviously those are following plan, do, check, act cycle. And as you're going forward, especially if you're doing your tactical projects after you pass your exam, you can definitely use that going forward to do your next kaizen event, to do your next activity out there. It's not explicitly asked. But then also in your reflection section, that's really where, as you go through maybe your 3 projects, doing them after your exam, you can definitely use that learning piece, right? What did you learn by completing your process, but also what did you learn by going through the different kaizen events? You can see a little portion of that plan, do, check, act piece there, and then also tying back to your challenges, your 3-year plan, what are your obstacles going forward? You could see plan, do, check, act cycle there. Hopefully that answered that question.
Okay, great. One more question. How does the certification compare with others?
Really, the really driving force for this certification, as you look at this when it started, was it seemed like there were so many organizations, so many companies out there providing a lean certification, a certification of completion, and it just varied greatly between the organizations. I always kind of said if I knew where people were coming from, if I knew their organization, you got a pretty good idea of what certification meant from that organization. Are they really serious, or are they, is it more superficial? What the Alliance does is it really provides this common body of knowledge that's recognized throughout the industry. So when I look at someone and they're Lean Bronze certified from AME, SME, and Shingo, I know exactly the body of knowledge in terms of the education they have. And then I know that they've done a minimum of 3 cycles of kaizen events following plan, do, check, act. And then they're also aware of the reflection piece, that Hansei piece, on how we can begin to do things better. When I'm looking at other organizations, I don't, unless I know the organization, I don't know what that means. So I really see this as the standard. And as people are beginning to tie this back to your companies, we are seeing a lot more folks that are specifying that a person has the AME, SME, Shingo Lean certification as one of the requirements for the hiring process.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for all your questions, and thank you, Hank, for a very informative presentation. We'll be sending a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. This brings our webinar to a close. Our next scheduled webinar will be on Thursday, April 5th, titled Engaged Value Stream Mapping for the Office with Bo Keith. Please visit AME.org under the AME Events and Training tab to click on the AME Webinars for more information and to register. Please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a productive day.